Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm really happy and glad to be here today to share with you my presentation on local community acceptability of solar power plants. It's really not technical presentation at all. So it's going to be very light, and I tried to make it really very simple into very simple slides so that you can follow with me, as it's not a technical, as I mentioned.
كنت قبل ما تدوزوا لهذه il faut apologize الناس pourquoi vous avez وبينا غادي يجي من
Can you mute your micro, Professor Nawi?
Yes, so I was saying that before I go into slides into my presentation, I just would like to let you know that I'm coming from a technical background, so I'm not a social scientist. So I did my PhD back in 2000. I started in 2012, and it was on mechanical degradation of CSP mirrors under Moroccan climate conditions. So my whole work was around mechanical degradation and soiling and erosion of CSP mirrors. And then 5 years or 6 years ago, it's when I started my first European projects dealing with another kind of work, which is a social science, if I may say. It's still on the CSP technology, but it's under a different perspective or under different lens. So why we choose to diverse a little bit or diverse our activity or our expertise is just because we start to see more and more protestation around having solar installation plants around people, around communities. So people start to protest and start to present a kind of barriers to those kind of implementations, and which really is a real issue to those kind of projects. So this is where we're coming from, and this is why we started our first project 6 years ago, as I said, on one of the Horizon 2020 funding projects. So let's get back to the to understand better. Let's get back to how a project can start initially. So it all started with an idea, like with a new idea that we will have. Then we will do all the research market studies. So it goes from business plan, business project, business analysis, project design, all the numbers and the figures that will assess if the idea will be good enough to be turned into projects or not. Then once we are happy with all of that, then the project is approved and can be implemented and can be ready to implement and start like launching the project. So if we talk about, or if we see it under investors' lens, the investors are always and forever, they are always looking for profitability, isn't it? So they are always looking for how to make profits and how to make much, like a lot of money out of their projects. And if we are talking about any renewable energy plant, I'll keep my presentation really general. I won't be specific to CSP, but let's talk about all renewable energy plants. So if we are talking about investors, if we are looking into investors' perspective, investors will be always looking into how to make most of their projects, and therefore how to keep the performance of their equipment as much as possible throughout the lifetime of the project. That's why they've been looking at the technical equipment really and the technical performance. For example, if we are talking about wind turbines, wind turbines, the performance of the solar fields, the mirrors, the conversions, and all those technical parts of the plant. However, the main challenge that is facing really those renewable energy plants, because as you know, if you have ever seen a real renewable energy plant in real life, they're huge. So if you, for example, if you think about a solar tower, or if you think about wind turbines, they're really big installations. So the main challenge for those plants or for those projects would be the acceptability issue. So this acceptability, or the community acceptance of those kind of projects, they can drastically affect the project. So they can just turn the project into dead, you know. They can stop the performance of everything, and they can just stop all the project for days, weeks, months, or even years if the problem is not solved with the community. This is why we were thinking about, start looking at the social acceptance and the social science sector. So if we need to understand how the community is working, or how the rights in a community is working. So in anywhere, wherever you go, in villages, cities, big communities or small communities, you will have, wherever we have people living together, we have a kind of set of rights that are capitals. We call them capitals. So there are a set of assets or rights that people are using and turning into activities. So for example, the right to for land, like the access to land, then people will transform it into agriculture activity they will be working on the land to generate money that will be resulting into livelihood outcomes, what we call a livelihood outcome. So it's the access to food, access to energy, access to health, education, and so on and so forth. And then then those livelihood outcomes will feed into, again, the assets, and they will change them. And then we will have the process again and again. So it's like a closed loop that will be one will feed into each other. But just to keep in mind, and that each specific community that I mentioned just now, they are all controlled or managed by the policies and the laws that are put in place by the government, either locally, regionally, or nationally on those communities. So they are all following some rules and government things. So this is the general idea, just for you to understand how it works, or how it's managed, like in any community. But then once we have any vulnerability context, that can be natural, for example, earthquake, drought, or also non-natural one, which is, for example, the renewable energy implementation thing, the project, which is a huge project, as I mentioned. So those will be vulnerability contexts, and those sorry, and those vulnerability contexts will again affect on my process, on the assets and capitals, and then it will impact on my on how people are living together in those specific communities. So that's why it's really important to understand how it works, so that we can target what we are looking for. So for that reason, I put here the key capitals. So in any community, again, we have 5 different capitals. So we have the natural, physical, social, human, and financial capital. So in each of those capitals, we will have a sub-elements or a set of assets or rights in each of those capitals, and that people will have either access to or not, depending again on the laws and policies that are in place in the community that we are talking about. So here I'm not going into much details on those few coming slides, because there are a lot of text in there, but I just wanted to to give you all the list of all assets per each capital. So here, for example, when we are talking about natural capital, it has all the things related to land value and access, the agriculture, the access to water, the quality of the water, the underground water quality, for example, and so on, the biodiversity, and also the pollution, for example. If we are moving to the physical capital, We will be talking more about infrastructure, really, the regional infrastructure, the access to transportation, the access to electricity, energy security, and all these kind of assets will be going into the physical capital. Then the social capital will have everything to do with the with people together, like the interaction between people, like the social structure, the equity and gender equality, the sense of the place, the community culture in the community, and the community cohesion as well, and the conflicts that can happen within a society in a given community. Then we go to the human capital, where again, this is the list of the whole thing. But in the human capital, we are mostly talking about job creation. We are talking about training, skills, development of people. Like we are talking about people in here in this capital, how we invest into people and into their development, skills development, and knowledge exchange, and technology transfer as well. And finally, the fifth capital will be the financial capital, the financial one. And in this one, it's everything to do with finance, basically. So it's all about money, about income, about socioeconomic situation, the increase or the decrease of the level of cost of living, for example, and so on, depending on the case again, and depending on the rights in each community, because it really is specific to the community and to the local region that we are talking about. So as I mentioned, I've started working on this 6 years ago, I think. My first project was Solwaris. So they are both Horizon 2020 funding research projects. And the second one that we are still running now, it's desalination. So for the Solwaris, we were just looking at CSP in general, like we were targeting CSP plants, and we were targeting the communities, local communities around, and we wanted to assess the opportunities versus the challenges. And in the desalination project, it's more about a desalination plant with reverse osmosis that we are considering, and it's more about in the Middle East. We are targeting the Middle East regions in our case studies. So the objective of those two projects are really quite similar. So we are, as I mentioned, we are looking into opportunities versus challenges of having a renewable energy within a community or close by a community members. So here I'm just showing a kind of examples of the opportunities. So for example, we have local job creation. If we are talking about renewable energy plant, we are talking also about rural development, creation of or increase of the quality of the infrastructure in the region, the access to the grid, and electrification, of course. And on the other side, if we look into the challenges, we'll be thinking about restriction in land access, people are losing their agriculture activities, and also we may have an impact on the wildlife and also on the water quality in the region that we are targeting. But so now it's the whole that you have now the whole picture or few examples, for example, for having a renewable energy plant. The question is how we can quantify, how we can see which one will take over the other. Is it opportunity over challenges, or challenge over opportunity, or it's a 50-50 kind of thing? So that's really the problem or that's the main research thing that we are targeting, is to know exactly how good or how bad is to have a renewable energy plant in the surroundings. For example, if we are talking about, I mentioned here the same thing, which is local job creation on the opportunity, and losses in agriculture jobs, traditional jobs as the challenge. So here, for example, we don't know which one is taking over the other. Is it do we have more local job creation rather than the ones that we are losing or that people are losing in their agriculture activity? Or maybe the local jobs that we are creating, they are all within the construction phase, for example, of the plant, which is 3 to 5 years, and then we are not really solving any problem. It's just a label to put into our projects like that. We are creating jobs, but in real life, all the jobs that we are creating are 1 to 3 years life, duration. So we are not really solving the issue for the local communities, because after the 3 years of the construction, or the 5 years even, people will find themselves with no jobs whatsoever. So that's the idea is to really quantify those opportunities and challenges and come up with some numbers, if I can say, or some weight to weight those. So for that thing, so we developed the framework. So in this framework, we choose some parameters and criteria that we will be using to assess our impacts. So the first one is to know if our impact will be positive. The nature, basically, is it positive or negative impact, or it's just an impact that won't impact really that much the local community. Then we have the significance. How significant is that impact? So if we're talking, for example, about noise, let's say, noise that is generated by the plant, is it a very high noise that we are talking about, or it's really very low that is really manageable? Again, it's really very important to classify those. Then we need to know about the duration of our impact. Is it, as I mentioned about job creation, is it a short impact duration, or it's an impact that will stay for the whole lifetime of the plant? That's a very important one to consider. Then we would like to know about the scale of our impact. So are we impacting just the local communities that are surrounding the plant, or our impact will go to the national level or to the regional level? So it depends really on the nature of the impact and how what is the scale, basically. And lastly, or at the end, we would like to assess those impacts throughout the lifetime of the project, which is 4 different stages. So we have the planning, the construction, the operation and maintenance, and the commissioning phase. So we would like to assess all our impacts throughout the lifetime of the project, so that we know exactly whereabout we have more opportunities than challenges. So for example, if we have more challenges than opportunities in the construction phase, but during the lifetime or the operation and maintenance, which is the longest period, which is around 20 years in average, we have more opportunities than challenges, then we can just try to convince the local communities, saying that, to sell our project, and also to increase the acceptability. So we need to know exactly what is it all about. So this is a snapshot of our developed framework. So here is just exactly what I just mentioned now. So we have all the planning phases, and then we have all the parameters and criteria that I just mentioned. And on the other side, we have all the 5 capitals with some examples of assets that I also mentioned earlier in my presentation. So this is the framework, but it looks like an easy task, but actually, trust me, it's really very complicated, because we need to fill in this framework as realistic as possible. We need to be really looking into unbiased kind of responses, because if you look at it from the lens or the perspective of local communities, they may have some more negative thoughts than reality. So they may have more negative hypotheses, or negative, they're thinking in a negative way towards the plant more than the reality. And if we think about, for example, scientists or experts, if we go and ask experts or investors, for example, or policymakers, they will maybe also biased by the fact that they are more they know more the theory about the plant more than the reality, again, because they haven't been experiencing the life beside the plant. So they just know how it theoretically work or should work, or, you know. So this is a very sensitive thing to do. So that's why we choose to combine those two by doing a participative approach, where we are targeting the local communities, the policymakers, the government, like local government representatives, for example, in the local areas where we have our project plans. And then the other side, we have a technical approach where we are targeting and asking the experts in the field to give us their subjective thoughts about having a renewable energy plant and what this will bring into real life thing. And then the idea is to merge both those approaches and come up with an all-encompassing study that will merge both views. So this is for the data collection. So as I mentioned, for the participative approach, we go to the local communities besides the plants or surrounding the plant, and we have focus groups. So those focus groups are just group discussions that we are having with the local communities. So we have tables where we just ask local people some questions, and we let them discuss this between them. And this kind of discussion, group discussion, enable us to gather really very interesting insights about how people are living their lives, and if they are really sharing real story things, or just some hypothesis or some things that they heard from others, which are not 100% true. Then on the other side, the technical approach, as I mentioned, it's with the experts, and in that one, we conduct semi-structured interviews where we ask experts some set questions, and the idea is really to have their views about the technology itself and how it works, so that we can merge them both, as I mentioned. So the benefits of this framework, of using this framework, or to fill in this framework, is that it will enable first to do the pre-feasibility study in order to identify either the potential positive or negative impacts that a renewable energy plant can have on the local communities. But bearing in mind that this is really specific to the country, and also to sometimes to the city we are targeting, or to the village we are targeting, because there is a big part of the culture environment or culture aspect that can affect those impacts. So as I mentioned, we have the experts' views that are most of the time unbiased, and we have the local communities' views. Then this framework will help also the investors to interact with local policymakers and government representatives, to engage with their local communities and have them engaged in the project since the start. So in that way, we will make sure that we are reducing this community acceptance issues that may happen in the future. And also, the investors need to think about establishing some plans beside the project implementation, to also engage people more into their work. So as a conclusion, looking into this social acceptance issue, it's really interesting to do the holistic pre-feasibility study or pre-feasibility assessment, in order to not just and only consider the technical, as I mentioned, or just the financial viability, but there are also some social and environmental and institutional dimensions that we really need to consider as investors, like for investors to consider if they would like to go forward with the project and make it really successful. And this includes all the capitals that I've mentioned, all the 5 ones. And also there is the vulnerability awareness planning that people need to consider. So the limited governance or the social politics tensions, because sometimes we do have a lot of social political tensions between communities, between, and this may also increase the issue of social acceptability of those communities. And as I mentioned, any project is more likely to succeed if local needs and values and perceptions are integrated into the design and planning. So it's really essential to, before going to the installation or the implementation of the project, to consider engaging the local communities with the project team even before going forward. And then looking into the investors' lens or in the investors' perspective, we have the risk management that need really to be taken into account. So they need really to address the community concerns because it reduced the risk of oppositions, as I mentioned, and also the legal delays and all the damage that can happen to the project if we don't take into consideration the local communities and their authority and their force to change or to stop or to delay your project. So also the investors need to consider allocating some funds for community benefits. So like some training, some reskilling, education initiatives, for example, and also helping with energy access also, it's really important. And then there is also a co-ownership, like benefit sharing mechanisms that can also help. So with acceptance again, like local revenue sharing or utility bill discounts, for example, for people living surrounding the plants. All those are really good initiatives and will all for sure help with the acceptance of those kind of renewable energy plants by the local communities surrounding them. So I think that's everything from my side. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, if you have any question, please let me know.